For those of you who don't know me, I'm Cindy Allen. Some know me as the Taylor Swift of trade, maybe because of my podcast, Simply Trade Cindy's version, that I host every Friday. Taylor has not yet contacted me, so it can't be official yet. I've been a licensed broker for since 1990. I've been in the business for 40 years now. And I've worked at small brokers. I've worked at very large brokers. I worked at NCBFAA running the NEI. I worked at CBP running the ACE business office. So the first topic I want to really discuss is the industry context, because there's a lot of great AI companies out there. We see a lot of technology out there, especially in the exhibitor booth. What I really want to say is how do you use it? Most brokers are stuck between legacy systems and growing compliance concerns and operating challenges. So Jerry, what I really want to know is, what are you hearing the most today from your customers, what some of those challenges are as a customs broker?
Yeah, I think for drawback specifically, the number one thing our clients are struggling with is data retention and document retention. If any of you have done drawback, it's a document-intensive process, and you can go back 5 years. So if we're asking a client for an export bill of lading from 4 years ago, they can kind of look at you like you're crazy, like, oh, that's going to be difficult to find, or I'm not sure where to get that. So I think they're in desperate need, and what they struggle with is that document retention piece of not having a tool that will, digitize or organize and process all that information for them.
And Omar, what do you hear from your customers? What are the big challenges that they're coming to you to ask to be solved?
I guess the one that Jerry talked about, just by default, our customers' problems we like to view as our problems, even if they don't have to do exactly with the work that we're doing directly with the customer. And really, it usually stems from just regulatory and compliance changes and the change management aspect that's involved in these enterprises as you try to adopt these technologies. So we really try to be that partner that helps them go about it one step at a time, and that's something that I'll make sure to touch on later in this conversation.
So great. What I really want to focus on next is the traditional model. All of us have workflows. All of us have a process. And I remember in some of the early ABI systems, and I'm talking 30 years ago, some of them were based on spreadsheets. So you had to move the file from one tab to a next manually, and hit the send button and go to the next phase, go to the next phase. If you think about that, historically, that has been a big challenge, and workflow tools seem to be some of the last things that technology really addressed in our space. So what from a vendor perspective, why was that, and why did that seem to be the last thing, and be large IT projects and very specific to a customer, and how do we really struggle, how we struggle today to implement workflows for all of us, because every one of our systems, every one of our clients are different. Every one of our processes is slightly different. So how do you address that as an IT company?
So I think before kind of addressing it, the reason it exists is simply because IT projects and large IT teams simply cannot catch up to the speed of regulation change, expectation changes from your customers, and you just need to be moving very quickly. There's almost this expectation from customs brokers and freight forwarders to operate at the speed that a startup operates. And waiting for IT team and their timelines and their projects and their kind of backlog just simply does not work with the changes that we're seeing today. And there becomes kind of increasingly a need for not only to adopt AI, I think that's given, and everyone in this room is here because that AI should be adopted. It's just a matter of the actual process and going through these changes. And one thing I will highlight here is the importance of having a Jerry in your business. It's actually funny, but we talk a lot internally at Reform about finding the Jerry at a company. Someone who is willing to roll up their sleeves, explain the business processes to an AI agent or an automation, test it out, iterate, and just really be the one that drives this throughout a company. You need this. Regardless of what a vendor says, we onboard very quickly. I said earlier in this conversation that Jerry built the first workflow in 20 minutes, but there obviously is challenges, and you need someone that wants to learn, and that person will end up creating a great career opportunity for themselves, and that's talent that's going to be in such high demand over the next few years, whether it's at logistics service providers or any other kind of company in a tangential industry.
Jerry, how did you really implement what you bought Reform for? What were the challenges? What were the workflows? How did you really do that? Because I think that's what we all, as customs brokers, really need to understand.
Yeah, it actually took me a second to get on board with Reform. It was during our trial period where we started making those automations, but I'm actually very skeptical of AI, even though I use it every day. It's kind of a hypocritical thing, but I'm just always cautious of that. So like I said, it took me a while to get started, but I had this task come up where we had a bunch of export invoices that had like tracking numbers on them. And normally we'd send that to our data entry team to go through each of those manually and grab that, but I thought it'd be a good use case for if Reform was actually the real deal or not. So yeah, like Omar said, it took me about 20 minutes to spin up the natural language prompt and connect all the different nodes together to get that automation going. And then just uploading the documents and receiving it all back within 60 seconds. And then reviewing them one by one, I was just blown away to see it was 100% accurate. Yeah, so that was kind of our first workflow and first experience with Reform. So given that positive experience, we were like, okay, this is something real. Let's really up the production on this. So we started making a ton more automations, not just for the export side, but also on our import side with the entry summaries and commercial invoices. And then what's really cool is once you have that initial automation set up, if you have differences between each of your clients, you can kind of tweak, you can duplicate and then tweak it for that client specifically. So it's just really easy to just make those initial ones and then scale it up to your whole business.
So it really sounds like it wasn't like a big bang, all or nothing. We're going to implement everything and you have to use everything. It was more, this is my business need. This is what I need. Mm-hmm. Can you build that in working together? Was that your experience, Jerry?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's everyone's dream. You know, you go in. It's like having your own personal IT department that you can tell them what you need, which, you know, is a fantasy of mine has always been that, to have my own IT department. So, Omar, you know, how does your system really allow operators to focus on things that need human judgment versus things that don't need human judgment, that doesn't need necessarily someone to touch that and fix something to go to the next step?
I think I'll leave some specific examples for you, Jerry, to share on how you actually do it. But in short, we have a dashboard for operators, and we have a dashboard for the Jerrys of your organization. And for the operator view, if we come across any exceptions, they get flagged as an exception with very clear reasoning as to why we think it's an exception and where in the data sources you should actually look at. And things that need actual iteration, and that's usually extraction accuracy. So there's a difference between kind of extraction accuracy that goes to the technical folks' dashboard versus data accuracy, which is inaccuracy of how we applied your business logic. That'll go to the operator view, and we'll tell them exactly what they need to kind of fix. And that's essentially how we handle that. But one thing I'll provide additional context is this is a lot more of a problem if you immediately start automating, or to your point, Cindy, is like go all in at once. There's 5 high-level kind of steps to automating a workflow, and that's a thing that Elon Musk talks about a ton. Step 1 is you want to make sure that you have watertight requirements. 2 is you want to delete a process. Whether you like it or not, regardless of how tough it is, there's probably a process in your end-to-end workflow that can just entirely be deleted or simplified drastically. 3 is to, again, simplify and optimize, and that's pretty different than the first step. Is here's the entire workflow, how do you simplify it? Step 4 is accelerate this workflow, and only 5 can you actually get to automate this work. The reverse is where the problem happens. A lot of companies will start with automating, especially because there's a conflict of interest. You want to evaluate an AI vendor and you want to throw all your complex problems their way, and it's like, the first thing I need to see is you automating that workflow, when in reality you already kind of started with the wrong step, and going from automating to accelerating to optimizing to deleting processes to then adjusting requirements will lead to a ton more exceptions. So if you really just go through the motion and then leave automation to the final step, you'll just have a lot less exceptions to worry about on both the operator side and the technical side. And that's why a lot of times we don't necessarily push for a product demo. We push for a conversation where we can ask you questions about your business to see how we can start with the actual 4 steps before we build an automation to do the work.
The next question is, automation. When people hear automation, they get a little scared. They're worried about errors. They're worried about how do I touch this? How do I know it's right? Don't I have to look at every file? How do you truly build in exception-based management that you can trust so that you know what you're sending to customs or to, FMC or whoever is accurate? So how do you help check the work, catch the discrepancies, flag the exceptions before they become a client issue, Jerry?
Yeah, what we do, kind of touching back on that point of you have to know your workflow and those watertight requirements. CITTA, we've been doing drawback for a long time, so we understand that process and we know those watertight requirements. So much to the point where the way we flag these exceptions in these cases that 100% need human review is by using code. Reform has the option where you can just kind of input your own programs essentially that evaluate the AI extraction. So for example, if you upload an invoice and you'd want to extract all the line numbers, trying to think of the best way to explain this actually. Yeah, with invoices, one thing you could check to make sure that you extracted all the lines correctly is to compare it to that invoice total. So you can actually sum up using code all of the different values and see if it equals that invoice total amount. And that's kind of a check you can have and a little peace of mind of knowing, okay, yeah, the AI extraction was correct because it passes this case. And that's just one example. If you start stacking all these different conditionals or true or false ways, you kind of get branching trees of different buckets that these cases can fall into. And the human operator can know, okay, it's in this bucket because it's true here, false here, true here. I know what I need to do or what is wrong with this one. But that's pretty much how we do it at CITTA.
So Omar, is that like if and statements and decision trees? Is that really what it's built on?
It's really a mix of some of the best technologies. We realize that one kind of solution doesn't really fit all. You can't have an AI agent for a lot of the workflows that need to be deterministic, like what Jerry just talked about. You don't really want an AI agent to just figure stuff out on its own. But in some cases, you do need an AI agent that can handle non-deterministic workflows. So Reform is really a hybrid of the traditional decision trees, traditional workflow automation, cutting edge AI agents, the ability to write your own code, or even the ability to write in natural language, and our product will translate it to code. And obviously we have stellar, we call them forward deployed engineers, or implementation engineers, or deployment engineers that'll help you get these things set up.
Jerry, what has been the real impact for your company? What changes did you see that you were able to implement and take advantage of after you implemented the tools?
Yeah, what we've been measuring is our hours saved between our data entry teams and then also the teams that are reviewing the output from those data entry teams. At the best we've seen, it's 1,600 hours a month, which is a crazy number to have, and on average is 1,000 hours a month. Again, that's across just data input and then also the humans reviewing it, because Reform's output is actually very solid and it's very consistent, so it's a lot easier to review than multiple humans coming together and putting their own spin on data entry and then consolidating that into one file to review. It's been a lot. Seeing that number was crazy.
So have the jobs changed within your company from a data entry to like more of a review type?
Exactly. Yeah, less time spent on the manual part of it and more on the reviewing of it.
And more customer touches.
Yes, and that frees up more time to then actually apply that human element and talk with clients and their forwarders and everything.
Can you quickly touch on the SOPs that you mentioned yesterday that you're kind of working on around the team's usage of Reform?
Yeah, the ideal state I'd like Reform to get into is, if we're bringing new people on, like we're growing really rapidly, so that's going to be a thing here soon. What I'd like is, rather than teaching them the old way of, you send it to the data entry team, it works like this, they'll give it back in X amount of time, whatever. Instead, I'd like to train them on this new Reform version of training them on the software as an operator, and then that's essentially their job, is they're a Reform operator rather than a data entry reviewer or input person.
So that's awesome. So, there's a picture of our future, folks, is we're going to stop focusing on data entry and start focusing on things that bring value to our customers, which is really the review, the knowledge, why we got into this industry in the first place, the expansion of our knowledge, sharing that with our customers. And that's really one of the things that excites me about automation and AI automation overall, is the ability for my own people to focus on the customer and what they need rather than on that data entry piece. So I always like to end with the bigger picture. Where are we going next? What's going to happen? What are systems like Reform and what are CITTA Brokerage really going to focus on next? What's the next big thing out there that you think is going to happen? And Jerry, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and I'll kind of start with what I love about Reform. It'll tie back here in a sec. What I like about Reform is it's not, trying to change our process. It's not this rigid software that we have to adapt to. Instead, it's the reverse. It's very flexible in looking at our process and the specific parts it can fit into. And that's just a way easy approach to implementing. It's not really change. It's more just enablement. But I think a lot of brokerages are going to experience that, whether it's with Reform or just AI in general, of it's not going to change the way you do things, but it's just going to make it more efficient. And I think that's just a nice gradual ease into an AI automated workplace.
And Omar, what are your thoughts? Where are we going next?
I think Jerry said it very well. With CITTA Brokerage, we didn't build the duty drawback workflow or platform, if you will, for them. We helped them build their own dream duty drawback AI platform. And I think that's where things are headed, a world where the operator almost becomes technical and has full control to actually build things that will make their own day-to-day much more efficient, because no one knows better what you want and what you need other than yourself. So we want to give you the tools to do exactly that. And I'll just simply close by saying it's like in a world where AI is just really taking over everything, we're trying our best to make sure that it's really the humans where so much of the knowledge continues to live. And you should ask yourself whether you want to be in the driver's seat and build a lot of these things and have control over it, or be in the passenger as other folks do it for you.